Margaret knows absolutely nothing about the time before she was dropped at an orphanage at age 5. She would stay in the dark about this for the next 40 years until her daughter Nancy came home one day with an old milk carton. A milk carton with Margaret's name and photo on it as a missing girl. And she was not the only person on the carton. Finding this boy would be the key to finally learning the truth about her past. Margaret was a nervous mess on the 3-hour drive to meet him. She had never been this close to learning more about her mysterious past. For nearly 40 years, she had been left in the dark, and now she was finally going to meet her brother Regan. The pair didn't know where to begin their conversation. There was so much to discuss. But one of the first topics was, of course, what had happened in those 5 years before Margaret was put off for adoption. And Regan knew a lot more about this than Margaret. In complete disbelief, Margaret listened to everything Regan had to tell her. Everything finally started to make sense to her. But why had Margaret been put up for adoption at 5? And why did she and Regan appear on a milk carton as missing people mere weeks after this? What are the secrets Margaret's past is hiding? While many persons, if not all, can remember a couple of things about the first 5 years of their lives, Margaret couldn't. And she had come to live with the fact that as long as she lived, there would be a lot of unanswered questions about her past. Questions she wished she knew the answers to. Margaret, as a young child, had been in an orphanage, but she had no recollection of this as well. She was adopted when she was about 5 years old and could only remember the events that took place in her life after the adoption. She had no memories of being adopted either, and her adopted family wanted things that way, so they hid the fact that she was adopted from her. But when she turned 21, she found out the truth. Because shortly after her 21st birthday, she decided to move out of her parents' house, and while she was moving, she stumbled upon her adoption papers. Confronting her parents with this new truth had not yielded her anything. They were sorry for keeping the truth away from her, but it was something they considered the right thing and would have done over and over. But that didn't stop Margaret from wanting to find out the truth. Instead, it fueled her desire to know exactly what went down in her past. She wanted to know why she had been put up for adoption, but any time she felt like she had a lead, she met a stumbling block. Her parents wanted no part in her pursuit. Neither did the orphanage home she was adopted from. Margaret couldn't help but wonder why the orphanage home had sealed every relevant document regarding her case. There were no helpful documents to look at, and eventually, Margaret got tired of running around a circle and stopped her investigation. She was going to focus on her present and have a fine life. But after 20 years, Margaret's daughter stumbled upon a lead so good that Margaret couldn't ignore it. There was a pretty good chance that she will be able to reunite with her biological parents and know exactly why they gave her up. Moreover, even if Margaret had wanted to give up and burn the lead, she couldn't for the sake of her daughter, Nancy, who had put in so much effort to find this lead. Nancy, a huge fan of Margaret, had chosen her mother as the subject of her school project. The project was to create a mini-biography of their hero, and Nancy, that was her mom. But when Margaret couldn't provide enough information on her past, Nancy took up the role of a detective. Nancy started with the local library just like her mother had done about 20 years ago, and again, it was an unsuccessful start. However, Nancy didn't let that stop her. She was determined to find the truth about her mother. So she looked even deeper and found a few relevant and interesting pieces of info that happened during the months Margaret was in the orphanage. Sadly, these bits of information, most of which were about the adoption and orphanage, were sealed as well, except one. There was just one interesting document that wasn't sealed. Nancy went through it and found something. What she found was unbelievable, but it was right there in her hand. Inside an old book with news articles from that era, she found a milk carton with 2 missing children on it. So she secretly ripped the carton out of the book and brought it to her mother. Margaret held the milk carton unbelievably. There had been a missing person carton for her. She wasn't given up for adoption, at least certainly not by her parents. Why had everyone kept this away from her? She took a closer look at the milk carton and realized that the milk production date was about a week before the orphanage took her in. The more she examined the carton, the more it didn't make sense to her. If there was a milk carton for her, why hadn't the orphanage called the authorities to report her found? Why did they keep her, and who on earth was the other boy? Her brother. It had to be. The boy had the same last name as Margaret on the poster. Margaret took a closer look at her brother, whose name was Regan. If she wanted the truth, Then she had to find Regan first. But how? Do a Google search on the first name. She was almost positive that that will yield absolutely nothing. She had Googled her surname several times and a Regan had never popped up. If it didn't then, chances are it wouldn't now. And truly it didn't. The Google search brought up nothing. She needed a more helpful approach, and thankfully, she remembered that Facebook existed. Though she wasn't huge on the app and was rarely ever active, but she needed its help. So she took a cropped picture of the poster with her phone to only show Regan's picture and uploaded it on Facebook. Along with the picture, she shared her story and why she needed to find Regan. Margaret feared that no one would share the post, especially since she didn't have a lot of Facebook friends. But thankfully, this wasn't a barrier. In just a few days, the post had gone viral in America. Everyone was talking about the 40-plus old woman who was separated from her family at age 5 and now needed to find her brother. Anyone who came across the post was moved to share in the hope that someone who knew Regan might see the post. Or perhaps even Regan himself. After a week, Margaret was still hopeful, especially when her story was covered on the news, because that meant that more people were going to be on the lookout for Regan. And she was right. Shortly after the news coverage, she found Regan. Or rather, Regan found her and sent her a message on Messenger. He had a different last name as expected, but he looked exactly like the boy in the poster, so there was no doubt that this was the brother America had been searching for. They texted all day and talked about everything except the main thing Margaret wanted to talk about. Margaret wanted it to be a physical meeting, so when she found out that Regan only lived a few hours away from her, she was excited and fixed a meeting as soon as possible. They both scheduled the meeting for the very next day. None wanted to wait a day longer to see the other. As Margaret drove to meet him, she could feel her legs and her voice fading away. She was tense and had absolutely no idea if the truth will be pleasant. But if it wasn't, she was ready to hear it.